Well, I'm back on my A330neo grind with my third straight video. This time, however, in the infinitely more rare A330-800 variant. Today's journey finds us in the East African country of Uganda as we fly the new flag carrier's flagship business class product across Africa. Timestamps will also be down below for those of you wanting to skip ahead to something specific. Now, Uganda Airlines as we know it today only began in August of 2019, but it's actually a revival of the old Uganda Airlines which operated from the 70s until the early 2000s. After government research, they opted to relaunch the national airline. They purchased 6 aircraft waiting to be delivered, 4 CRJ-900s, and 2 of the ultra-rare A330-800 Neos, which actually led to them holding the youngest fleet award until last year when it was given to Starlux. Being that Uganda only has a few airports, Entebbe is the hub of Uganda Airlines and the only airport with international service. They planned originally to launch with service to nearby Nairobi, Kenya, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and Mogadishu, Somalia. At this point, they serve 14 destinations across 11 countries, mostly in East Africa, then Mumbai, Lagos, and Dubai. They've explored more outside the African continent as far as Tel Aviv, Guangzhou, Bangkok, and London. On October 19th of last year, however, Uganda Airlines finally launched Lagos flights as their first West African destination. Being just outside the range of the CRJ-900, it had to utilize their long-haul aircraft, the A330neo. It also brought the first connection between Uganda and Nigeria, but also provides a cheap alternative for people connecting from their other larger destinations onwards to Africa's second largest city and largest economic hub. I'm excited to check it out today, and I hope you guys are as well. Let's head to the Entebbe Airport. Welcome to the Entebbe International Airport, the main international airport for the country of Uganda. Now, it sounds like unofficially, the Entebbe Airport is one of the things holding Uganda Airlines back, with the airport falling short in a number of ICAO standards. Until these are met, it partially restricts where the airline is able to fly. At this time, it's still the only international airport in Uganda, but the terminal was built in 1973 and hasn't seen much work done since then. But in 2015, they got money from Korea to help with renovations. In a 3-phase project, with help from China, Entebbe should have a fully renovated airport soon. It was originally quoted to be done by 2035, and although it may just be a bit behind schedule, they at least have part of the new terminal completed. So we will see parts of this new construction while here in Entebbe. Since opening this first phase, Entebbe Airport has recorded their second highest monthly passenger count ever. So I'm excited to see what they have prepared for that. We are lucky because you can see the old portion of the terminal. However, just before our journey, the first phase of the terminal renovation was completed. Instead of lugging your bags upstairs, you can now be dropped off at the top of the ramp and walk right inside. Now, here's where today's slight problem begins. To enter the airport, there's a security check. The line for entering the airport was so long that it took over an hour just to pass through that security screening. After that whole debacle, we reached the check-in desks. We had to go through a ticket check, and then could proceed to the check-in counters, where there was 1 desk per flight. We found the counter for Lagos and got our boarding pass and lounge pass, in addition to checking our bags and getting this little survey. Directly adjacent to the check-in was the outbound immigration and security checks, which also had a pretty long line. Maybe it was just the time I happened to be here, but it took me 2 hours to get from the curb through security, so I guess plan for that. Now on to the terminal. This part seems to be the older remains of the terminal, so I wonder if this will be incorporated in the next renovation stage. I do love the souvenir shops and restaurants in these African airports, considering it's not all W.H. Smith and Hudson News, a lot more local items. Down the main hallway was a good handful of local shops that I enjoyed looking around. And at the end of the hallway we find the Maribuni Lounge, the business class lounge for Uganda Airlines, amongst others. After giving them my lounge invitation pass, it didn't take long to take in the views of this large, single-room lounge. Ugandan colors are used, but everything here just seems to be showing some age and wear. Cracks in the leather, dirty carpets. Hopefully with the new terminal renovation, we see a whole new lounge as well. The decor doesn't end there. For better or for worse, we see this large fountain with local decorations. Sure, it's got some Ugandan accents, but it's just not my vibe. Feels a bit out of place here. but it does block the entrance to the restrooms at least. Speaking of restrooms, it does appear that they have a shower here. You see the problem too? Yeah, the door is like almost see-through in the middle of the main restroom, so I guess I'm gonna wait till we get to Nigeria to take my shower. To their credit, they do have computers and a printer, which I use to print my Sri Lanka visa for later on this trip, and a little massage chair. The food in here was a bit disappointing, as everything was either cooked to oblivion or just kinda tasteless, and then kept in these cases to keep them either warm or cold. Unfortunate, since there's some good food in East African cuisine, they just seem to have forgotten to serve any of it here. At least from this side of the lounge we could get a little bit of a view of the country of Uganda, as well as the remote stands. Unfortunately, there's not a great view of the main jet bridge gates here at this airport, just based on how the lounge is set up. But boy, was there a lot of bugs on those windows. Before long, it was time to head over to our gate 3A, a remote stand for us today. One thing that I noticed is that for the remainder of today, every single Uganda Airlines flight was also out of this gate, leading it to be by far the most crowded, but also made me curious since that means that no Uganda Airlines flights get jet bridges. Maybe Qatar and Emirates are just paying top dollar for the jet bridges and Uganda can make some extra cash that way? I don't really know. Eventually we began boarding, although without any sort of organization, so it just kind of felt like a competition. Almost as if they just said, alright, everyone to Lagos, go, 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 board now, this is the last helicopter out of Vietnam. I did appreciate the walk to the airplane at least. It allowed me to get some good steps in, some good ramp views of the airport and aircraft, and I also had a good laugh with my new friend Emmanuel, who lives in the Abuja region of Nigeria, and helped me quite a bit with the next 24 hours of my travel. Everyone say hello, Emmanuel. Thanks, Emmanuel. Our short stroll ended with us reaching our A330, one of the two in their fleet and the same one that I arrived in on from Dubai only a couple hours before. I've learned that Uganda Airlines livery is polarizing. I love it and think it looks incredible on this aircraft, but apparently there's a good portion of people who just find it ugly. Finally, up the stairs and to the left, we reach the business class cabin. As with Air Senegal and Air Calin, Uganda Airlines' A330neos are rocking the exact same interior, only with their specific color choice. And as we're somewhat used to, the even-numbered seats have the seats a little closer to the aisle. The odd-numbered seats have the counter closer to the aisle, making it so you're closer to the window, but you also have a little more privacy. Now off to our seat today, we're going to take a look around at seat 5A, the last row of business class. I did appreciate the headrest being adorned with the Uganda Airlines logo, the headrest of course being tiltable and foldable at the edges. As with last week's Air Calin video, the seat's plenty wide, it's just a little firm for my taste. The armrest is along the window and does not move, but it is a nice little accent color to the seat. Overhead, unfortunately, as with most A330s, there is no individual air vents. In front of us is the touchscreen seatback TV with the Uganda Airlines logo on it for now. Tray table, being below that, comes out with a little release lever, sliding out, giving you plenty of space for a meal or to get work done, but not exactly both. The footwell being below that is super deep, nice if you're super tall. Unfortunately, the main drawback that I find with this setup is the literature pocket being on the side. Makes it so you don't have a ton of space if you decide to pack it full. Underneath that leg rest is where you find a little storage. Not enough for a bag, but if you want to take your shoes off, it's a good storage for that. And to the right of that, on the seat back in front of you, is where you find the coat hook, and pretty much nothing else. You can see here just how open we are to the aisle, however, the even-numbered seats being much less private. Speaking of which, along the aisle is where we find the main countertop and storage for this seat. On the top is the storage slot for the headphones. Below that being the only enclosed storage, not huge, but plenty for storing chargers or amenities. Over here we also have a reading light, which can be swiveled, and just below that is also where we find the headset jack. The seatback TV remote is stored here along the counter. It's beginning to be one of my favorite styles, the type that has the touchpad on the top. Here you can see the countertop, not huge, but it's good to supplement the tray table if you needed to both eat and use your laptop. the seat adjustments being on the side of that with presets and the ability to adjust things individually. And lastly, down by your ankles is where you find the universal charging port and USB plug. As far as amenities go, we were each given a nice bottle of still water, along with the pre-departure beverage. I chose to go with the orange juice. We were also given the noise-canceling business class headphones. They were alright, not the most comfortable, but at least they had a good little spot to store them. I was a big fan of the white amenity bags here with the Uganda Airlines branding on them. It had a lot of the normal items, but a couple of fun surprises like a shoehorn, a shaving kit, and a comb. Then was the bedding. You can see the pillow here. It's a pretty good size. It filled up most of the headspace, but it was also super firm. No need to supplement it with anything else. Then was the blanket. It's a bit heavier than it looks like, and it's also plenty plush, so it kept me super warm and comfy on this flight today. Lastly, we were given our hot towels before pushback, along with another pre-departure beverage. This time I decided to go with some champagne. Now personally, I was just very excited to add the A330-800 Neo to my plans just because of how rare of an aircraft type it's become. Despite the great success of the A330 Neo program, of the nearly 300 ordered aircraft, only 12 of them are the 800 variant, with Uganda Airlines holding 2 of those. The others are spread amongst Kuwait Airways, Garuda Indonesia, and Air Greenland, another airline on this year's plans. The main perk of the 800 variant is that it has an additional range, despite having a higher fuel burn per seat due to the lower capacity. Now, the 900 variant's range isn't necessarily small, but it does pique the interest of what Uganda Airlines was eyeing with the longer range version of the aircraft. This is similar to the A330ceos, where the 200s have a greater range, but the 300s have a better takeoff weight. So far, no one is really taking advantage of the A330-800's range, but if any more orders come in, I guess we'll see how they get used. Technically, Uganda Airlines could reach North America with these aircraft, so maybe with some growth, we'll see a better utilization of these ultra-rare aircraft. For now at least, we're just grateful that it has allowed Uganda Airlines to be the first Uganda airline flying beyond the African continent in roughly 20 years. As we climb away from the small East African country, let's take a look through the in-flight entertainment offerings by Uganda Airlines. I was curious just because they don't fly to a ton of countries that would usually watch American films. Movies, however, had 56 options, most of them in English, and most of them were top hits. For the TV shows, you'll see there was 82 total shows. That's 82 total episodes, not individual titles, but even still, it had some of the top classics, Big Bang Theory, Young Sheldon, stuff along those lines. And each show had multiple episodes, usually between about 4 to 8. Not the greatest selection of music with only 20 albums, but at least each one was a full album full of songs. The kids section had some more movies and TV shows specifically geared towards kids, or so they say. Scooby-Doo was definitely piquing my interest. A surprisingly low amount of games, something I didn't spend a whole lot of time on in this flight. There were, however, 10 different magazines, mostly African magazines, but a couple from around the world. Then was a section with 7 different videos all about Uganda and the different parts and experiences of Uganda. There was also a short survey which I filled out at the end of the flight. Then, lastly, was the map. You can access it from the home page or when you're watching anything with the airplane icon. It made me nervous because usually these maps on the A330s aren't adjustable. However, this one was pretty adjustable, just like you would move your phone by pinching to zoom or move the map around, in addition to seeing all of the necessary flight information. I also have to give them props. Even though there isn't too many items to watch, you are able to add things to your favorites, making them much easier to find later on in the flight. Now, they did have this QR code which they said would help personalize the in-flight entertainment experience. However, for the life of me, I couldn't actually get it to do anything. Now, I was able to find the in-flight Wi-Fi on board, although similar to the personalization efforts, I wasn't quite able to get it to work. I was able to get it to connect, however I'm assuming there's some website or something I need to purchase the Wi-Fi or access the entertainment options, and it wasn't very well advertised. Now, they had brought up the mood lighting, but considering there was only one other business class passenger and then some crew, most of the window shades stayed open until later on in the flight when the flight attendants came around to close some of them. It was, however, time for our meal service. They didn't get any sort of menus on this flight. Instead, they came through with the options ahead of time to ask us what we wanted, and then they brought us later on. Our meal service started with the Uganda Airlines placemat and a little bowl of cashews. Now, the main course came later on. First off was the starter, and if I'm being quite honest, I'm not sure what half of this stuff was. We did get some of this soup-like substance with a little ball of mozzarella in it. It was pretty tasty. Then was the cheeses, cheddar, some soft brie, and whatever this was in the middle. And then was the dessert, which I chose to eat after the main course, which was basically cream puffs. And while it might not be engraved, we did at least have the Uganda Airlines logo on all of the silverware. Fish or chicken were our options for the main course. I decided to go with the chicken entree, and it was some of the better cooked chicken I've had on an airplane. They were able to cook it without completely drying it out. I chose to follow that up with a nice glass of Coke. You can see here the meal from my first flight for content's sake. A nice coffee, but some of the better mac and cheese I've had in my life. Who would have thought it would come from an African airline? With more of the window shades shut, we could really see the full effect of this mood lighting. That meant that it was time to get cozy. Nothing says getting cozy like setting up a bed. Even though it's a short flight, figured we might as well check it out. Now, obviously started from a seating position, we can recline the seat using the buttons on the side of the counter that we saw while looking around the seat. Obviously, we have the presets, which can move it into a relaxing or lying position, or we can move each piece individually. First thing that we're going to check out here is the relax preset. Now, it was reclining just like any other seat, but as soon as I saw it start to tip back, I knew it was going to be good. One of the things that makes it extra comfortable is when it tips you back into the seat a little bit, rather than just having a normal recline. I sat like this for most of the flight with my feet up on the footrest and was plenty comfortable. From there, we'll use the lie flat preset to bring it all the way down, where we can then use it as a bed. You'll see that it meets up fully with the footrest, making one continuous surface, and even though there's no mattress pad, it was still pretty comfortable to lie on. Obviously, we can't fully enjoy it until we make the bed. So, first things first, we throw that pillow in there. You'll see that it takes up the entirety of the space, and it's pretty firm. All in all, I found it to be a very comfortable pillow. Then was the blanket. Like I mentioned, it is heavier than it looks, and it does have that soft feel to it. It was plenty warm. As a matter of fact, I even got a little too warm with it, but I'm sure most people would be super comfortable. The only drawback with this bed is that since you can't adjust the armrests or anything like that, it can get a little narrow, especially in the footwell when you're sleeping. However, as long as the footwell is super deep like this, you don't have to worry about being too tall for the seat. Speaking of the footwell, you can see here that while lying on my back, my toes just about touch the top of that footwell. Also not a ton of space to the sides. This is kind of what I mean when I say it's tight. You really can't sleep on your side, and if you do sleep on your back, there's just not a ton of space, so expect your feet to be a little bit cramped. And the last thing we have control over is the ambient lighting. By hitting that button, we can turn the light off in the footwell to bring our suite all the way dark. And lastly here, you can see the privacy while you're in bed mode. You'll see that you can't really see me while I'm lying in bed, and I can't really see anyone else. Even if I lean forward, I might only see their legs. So, definitely a reason to choose those odd-numbered seats. Now, as mentioned, I didn't really sleep on this flight. It was only about a 5-hour flight, and it was in the middle of the day. So instead, I just got comfy in my seat, relaxed to watch my movies and get work done, and people watch. Which is how I realized that it must be a pretty small world here, because pretty much everyone in business class knew all the crew. I'm assuming that on their routes with these A330s, like Dubai, like Lagos, they have a lot of the same customers traveling for business and whatnot. Everyone just seemed to be super friendly and know everyone. Now, if you know me, you know that I love when airlines add their own little personal touch to their lavatories. Unfortunately, we'll call this the curse of the A330s because it seems like whenever I'm on an A330, it's aggressively basic. Just white lights, white surfaces, white walls. As a matter of fact, in this airplane, the only personal touch, if you even want to call it that, was just this little bottle of soap that they had. On the way back to my seat, while exploring just a little bit, I came across this service bin, which seems to be going through a bit of a self-crisis. When we got back to our seats, we were given our hot towels, which marked our descent into Lagos, as it appeared it would be a race of us versus the sun. Now, Uganda Airlines still hasn't posted a profit in their short lifespan. 2022 actually included a $72 million loss. And even though it appears they had incredible growth in 2023, it doesn't appear that they've broke even just yet, and probably won't for another few years. Even still, we have an idea into their plans for the future. Last year, Boeing and Airbus made their pitches to Uganda Airlines, who stated they wanted a good mid-range aircraft that could reach London or Mumbai during slow seasons, hinting at A321neos or 737 MAX, both capable of what they're looking for. To help with Uganda Airlines' growth, just last year they announced their plans to join the single African air transport market. Africa is severely underrepresented in the aviation world, partially due to a lack of open skies agreements and countries trying to protect their national carriers. SATM works to create agreements amongst African carriers, allowing much better aviation growth across the continent. That being said, as far as their expansion, they seem to be focusing mostly outside of Africa, as after adding Dubai, Mumbai, and Lagos, despite a number of delays due to COVID complications or certification, they've long had London and Guangzhou on their radar. Since their start, they've publicly touted plans for Dubai, Mumbai, London, and Guangzhou. Since then, we've seen Dubai and Mumbai launched, while London and Guangzhou remain to be seen. Uganda Airlines actually was able to secure some rare Heathrow landing slots in 2021, but a year later, people awaited a schedule announcement. In 2022, they finally announced a thrice-weekly service beginning in November, but after being unable to secure a foreign carrier permit in the UK, those plans were delayed once again. In 2023, they announced the plans for a London service had been suspended due to the Entebbe Airport failing to meet ICAO standards in things like legislation, organization, licensing, operations, airworthiness, accident investigations, air navigation services, and aerodromes, scoring far below the global average and even the average of other nearby airports. Amidst this London debacle, Uganda Airlines mentioned they may switch their focus to Guangzhou China service. Well, after COVID complications in China for a while, Uganda Airlines did secure landing rights in 2022. As with London, we awaited a schedule announcement. In 2023, it sounded like we would finally see the Guangzhou service begin, but to this day, I can't find any proof that a Uganda Airlines A330 ever landed in China. In the heat of this growth, the CEO of Uganda Airlines, Jennifer Bamutaraki, raised eyebrows after it was found that she lacked the proper qualifications to be the CEO of the airline. In her defense, she claims that she never technically applied for the position, instead being appointed by the board of directors after the halted search for a CEO, including roughly 40 candidates. While it sounds like she has some mixed opinions about her time as head of the company, being in charge of an airline at these early stages is never easy. I wish the airline luck recovering financially from its early struggles and with its planned growth. For now though, it seems the next couple years could be a bit unpredictable for Uganda Airlines. Welcome back to Nigeria, where this trip had met some more unfortunate news, which is too long for this video. We'll cover it in a future video though, for sure. Long story short, Uganda has definitely put together a better flag carrier than Nigeria has. Speaking of which, what are my thoughts on Uganda Airlines? While the cabin's great, I wouldn't say that it's unique. It seems to be the standard business class seat on the A330neo, as we saw it on the other few airlines that we've flown recently as well. That being said, it is a good seat. My main critiques would be that the footwell's a bit narrow and the seat and headrest are a bit too firm for what I'd like. What does make these products more unique is the soft product, since even if the seat's the same as any other aircraft, the airline has the ability to add their personal touch to that part. First off, the crew. They were very kind and seemed to know a good chunk of the passengers, which kept them in fun conversations and smiling throughout the flight. The food was alright. It was a one-tray service, but that's fairly normal for these smaller airlines. I had the vegetarian option on my first flight and the meat option on my second flight. I wouldn't rank either in my top 10, but they definitely weren't bad. The bedding was perfect considering the route structure. Their longest routes are only about 5 to 7 hours, so the one large pillow and thick comforter is more than enough to stay comfortable. The airport is a mixed opinion topic, since it definitely needs updated gate areas and lounge, but it does sound like that's in the works. It seems like I hit the airport at a strange time where it's half renovated and so freshly opened that they were probably still working out the kinks. So I guess we'll come back in 5 years or so when the entire airport's finished with its renovations. The best thing about this flight, however, was the value. I booked it as a journey from Dubai to Lagos via Entebbe for $1,200 US. It's worth noting that if I had booked only Entebbe to Lagos, I would have only saved $12, so it's safe to say that booking the connection was well worth it. It's difficult to find wide-body business classes for this cheap, so I probably would have been able to justify the cost regardless of what it was like on board. The fact that Uganda Airlines actually offered a good product just made it that much better. I guess the biggest disappointment is that I don't see myself flying with them again soon, but only due to their route network. It sounds like they keep promising this growth to Europe and Asia, but keep failing to deliver on that promise. That would probably be my best shot at flying with them again soon. I just feel like since I don't see myself going back to that region in the near future, just since I'll be busy elsewhere, it's unfortunate since if I ever do have the chance to fly with Uganda Airlines in their A330neo business class, I'd 100% take the opportunity, especially at that price point. But maybe that's just me. At the very least, it was fitting to end the video being welcome to Nigeria in this way. What way, you ask? Well, we parked at the old terminal, but it looked like they couldn't move the jet bridge into place despite trying. So we walked down air stairs, got on buses over to the new terminal to pass through immigration there and wait forever for our bags to be brought over. That's all fine and dandy, except to reach the taxi queue, we then had to leave that building, go back over all the way to the other terminal, out the exit building, where we were finally able to catch our taxi away from this mess of an airport and off to our hotel. Stand by for some more stuff on the Air Peace and Nigeria story. In the meantime, though, let me know your thoughts on Uganda Airlines and today's flight experience. And until next Sunday, safe travels. I will see y'all next time.